Ladies and gentlemen, what you have all been waiting for. My top 5 films by Christopher Nolan, bitch. Alright, so, starting off with the fact that Christopher Nolan is my favorite movie director of all time. He just is. He creates high concept movies into
that jacket that Bane
just
was
masterpieces,
fresh as fuck.
and they end up becoming blockbusters. With the fleece on? Starting at number 5 is The Dark Knight Rises,
That shit is fire.
which is the last film to one of his, definitely his best trilogy, but one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. Nolan is like one of those directors that can just introduce anybody so well, even a villain or a hero. We see that in The Dark Knight, and then we see it in The Dark Knight Rises. In this case, we get Bad Boy Bane, who takes down Littlefinger in the first 15 minutes of the film. I mean, he just wrecks him, his whole family. Even if he didn't have one, it didn't even matter. Apart from Bane and Batman, the film introduces two strong and fine female characters in Selena Kyle and also Miranda Tate, who later on becomes known to be Talia. Nolan a lot of time does is he reuses a lot of his cast. Like later on we see Joseph Gordon-Levitt in Inception, and Michael Caine is like one of his favorites to use. He's in like in every movie almost. Anne Hathaway is later on in Interstellar. And then when it comes to the visuals, DP Wally Pfister decides to make Gotham look very noir-like, and it works. I mean, Gotham gets to work from Bane in so many ways that Kratos even joined in. I didn't even know Kratos was in this movie until I saw him get the work from Batman. One critique of the film is that some of the combat scenes between Bale and Hardy seem kind of way too staged, and they're just like waiting for each other to punch. I always thought that the Robin incident was kind of like a what if situation, like in a different world where Nolan decides he wants to make like an extra 5 DC films just for Warner Brothers. Like they probably had to pay him like at least $1 billion just to continue to make more of them if he wanted to. The conclusion to the trilogy is quite satisfying and makes its way onto my list. See the tension in every shot. At number 4, it is Interstellar, Nolan's space movie that has some of the best visual effects, if not the best from all. The story follows Mr. McConaughey during his McConaughey sense, some of the best acting in his career. Newcomers into the Nolan group like Jessica Chastain add to the ensemble. There are some iconic scenes that involve a lot of tears from Mr. McConaughey. The story in Nolan fashion includes twists that work and some that won't work. The biggest idea that did not seem to work is that love is the fifth dimension that is able to bring Cooper back to the future reality. Part of Nolan's success as a writer is how good his payoff is. For me, it did work because love was a consistent theme that was represented in with Dr. Brand, and especially the relationship between Cooper and his daughter. A big standout was Hans Zimmer's score, which is one of the best, if not the best, from all the films he's done with Nolan. The other score is part of my top film. The Hans Zimmer and Nolan combination is one of the best of all time. As far as the visuals go, Hoyt van Hoytema takes over the role of Wally Pfister as the DP. Hoyt used a film look that includes Nolan's favorite IMAX cameras. The film for the most part relies on excellent visual effects that are seen every time we visit a new planet. The wavy planet was the best out of all of them, to be honest. The shots of the spaceship in space and when the ship was close to the black hole are breathtaking. Now at number 3 is Memento. This one was hard to place because number 2 and 3 were so close for me. The earliest work from Nolan to end up on this list is one of the most mind-bending narratives I had ever seen. The narrative style that would be a staple of Nolan's work to come. The back-and-forth storytelling nature complements how great the edits are, because the transitions are often seamless. Along with the story, the characters, as always, are enthralling. The side characters are also great and add to the interactions with Leonard, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Joe Pantoliano especially. The visuals in Memento are not as grand as that of Interstellar or as The Dark Knight Rises, but Wally Pfister still manages to create great shots. Nolan applies his black and white nature from his first film, The Following, and then adds color into the mix. Part of the success of the film has to go to his brother Jonathan Nolan, who came up with the idea from a short story he had written previous. Then Chris decided to collaborate with him and write the script. The amount of detail added to the film is what surprised me, from the concept of short-term memory loss to the tattoos and the unforgettable Sammy Jenkins story. Memento is a film that gave me an experience unlike ever before. Certain movies just open the box of infinite possibilities in filmmaking, and this is one of them. And number two is Nolan's unforgettable Batman film, The Dark Knight. Definitively the best film out of the trilogy, one of the most memorable movie openings I have ever seen. The Joker, my favorite villain in all superhero related movies, and still to this day, is my favorite on screen performance from the deceased Heath Ledger. Rest in peace. This is also my favorite superhero movie of all time. A lot of my love for this movie has to go to Heath Ledger and how he plays a Joker that not only has a lust for chaos and madness, but it is an overall mastermind. The Dark Knight has some of the best action sequences in all of Nolan's films, mainly the sequence that involved Nolan's use of IMAX cameras. You can feel the confrontation of Batman and the Joker elevate in that scene. Something that has always impressed me about Nolan is how he does not use CGI as much as a lot of current movies do today. Instead, he incorporates real explosions and sets for his action sequences and his strive for realism. You also see the realism in the vehicles introduced in the film, like the Batmobile and Batman's bike. The story is one of Nolan's best, as he takes an iconic character like Batman and makes Gotham City feel even bigger. We see numerous criminals to the mob families and the introduction of Harvey Dent, later known as Two-Face, and the unforgettable Joker. With Harvey Dent, Nolan exposed how Gotham can be a place where even the good can become evil. Gotham has never been better depicted. It is the perfect sequel because it creates depth in the entire world of the film as well as its characters. Where do I begin when it comes to my number one movie, not just of Nolan, but of all time? That is the film, of course, Inception. Inception is number one to me, partly on merit and a lot of emotion. It is the first film to get me into wanting to become a filmmaker. It completely changed my mind on what a film could be. From a story standpoint, it is the most creative story by Nolan, up there with Memento. But now Nolan got the opportunity to have a larger budget and push his imagination to the limit. From the sets that were created in the scene with the rotating hallway with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, to the visual design scene in the world that Cobb and Maul created on the Dream Island. Writing this makes me want to go see the movie right now. As always, the main hook into Nolan's films is that they are of a high concept, which is what consistently brings a lot of people to see his films, including myself. It is the most watched film I have seen from Nolan, and nothing comes close. Technical vision, it is one that relies both on CGI and man-made set pieces the most. Those two factors marry the sensation while watching the film between reality and fiction. The scene with Ariadne and France still is iconic and remains in the minds of people who have seen the film. The musical score, as mentioned before, is on par with that of Interstellar, composed once again by the fantastic Hans Zimmer. Every time Cobb and the crew make it back in the final moments of the film, it just feels like a ton of weight has lifted off my shoulders. Just to talk about the ending of the film, in some capacity, it is still one of the best ambiguous endings ever witnessed. The way the camera slowly dulls into Cobb's token and then cut to black, perfect.